When you hear the term post-apocalypse, many things probably come to mind. Deserted lands, raiders, struggle for resources, zombies, aliens, mutants. But what if instead there was just nothing? Just empty cities, lonesome roads, machines that work for no one's sake. In Studio White Fox's anime adaptation of Girls Last Tour, you join two girls and a Soviet motorbike thing as they make a journey to mankind's endpoint, with seemingly no endpoint in sight. And today I'll be talking about what makes it really cool. The story follows Chito and Yuri, two young girls who have been instructed to travel far, far away and survive in any way they can, as some event in the recent past has led to the end of society as we know it. Chito is very serious and responsible, while Yuri is a bit of an airhead, and they make company for each other as they travel these vast empty surroundings with nobody else in sight. You could describe this as a very strange slice of life show, as the main draw comes from observing these two characters explore this world they know barely nothing about. Everything in it is a bit of a mystery, as the circumstances that have led to humanity's end are as unclear to us as they are to the two main characters, as well as the functionality of everything around them, which is where one of the main strengths of the show comes from, a great sense of world building. The environments in Girls Last Tour are fantastic, with great structures, cities built on top of cities, intricate factories, ever-working machines and mysterious temples. From the little details like the uniforms the two girls wear to more significant things like the sheer amount of military equipment left laying around, a picture starts forming in your head as you imagine what kind of society this was, and wonder how things ended up this way. But even if you wonder about it, the same can't be said about the main characters, who are largely uninterested in what happened and instead just move forward, blindly towards more resources. They explore, laugh, fight, play around, but they very rarely ever think about the situation they are in. It's not a happy show by any means. Despite the relaxing feeling of just watching these two characters waste away in this empty world, it's as inevitable to them as it is to the viewer to think about the strange situation they have found themselves in. It's a strange feeling of hopelessness, a strange feeling of despair that is ever present. They are seemingly alone. Humanity has ended and there is no future for them. What is it that they will gain by just going forward and forward? No matter how lighthearted they are, the situation they find themselves in is still harrowing, but the two of them are seemingly just too naive to take notice. It's not a happy show, not because of what happens to the main characters, but because of the meta perspective you, as a viewer, have on their situation. You know how society is nowadays. You know how much was lost once it was destroyed, but they don't. This is just the world they have always known. It's a very melancholic feeling, and it's from this that the more philosophical aspects of the show come from. Throughout the episodes, Chito and Yuri learn more and more about society, and sure enough, with the more knowledge they acquire, the more understanding they become of their hopeless situation. And the feeling of despair starts to creep in. But as the title of this video alludes to, one of the main themes of this show is getting along with the feeling of despair. Getting along with the feeling of being hopeless, with the feeling of being powerless. Doing the best you can with what you have and enjoying the little bits of happiness you find along the way, small as they may be. They explore old factories where they talk to robots that are still functioning. They mess around with the military equipment and witness the sheer level of destruction it's able to dish out, and in one of the most heart-wrenching moments in the whole show, they sit in an empty apartment and imagine how nice it would be to live in a home like that, having the luxuries of a bed and a pantry, before they stand up and continue moving on, as staying there would only lead them to running out of food. The old adage rings true, you really do only miss things once you lose them, and much of this show is about how these two girls don't have the society around them that we just take for granted. And I feel that to talk more about this, it's important to first introduce the manga's original author, Tsukumizu. From the author's notes, posts on Twitter, or just the bleakness of her art style, I think it's easy to see her as a bit of a depressed individual, or at least someone with a bleak outlook on life. A bleak outlook, but not one that I would describe as nihilistic, just the outlook of someone who can find beauty in a final destination. Endings can be very scary. An ending to a show you love, an ending to a friendship, an ending to a romance, or even ending to a life itself are all concepts that aren't nice to think about. and maybe that's why I think that Tsukumizu's outlook is so interesting. Here's a quote from her. "It seems that mankind still isn't able to define the concept of life that well. In contrast to Chito and Yuri's instinctive perception of it, maybe life really is something that goes on eternally, uninterrupted. Maybe it has no end. Thinking of it that way makes me feel a little uneasy. An uneasiness that myself, for which an end will certainly come one day, could end up being left stranded eternally. Or maybe it's loneliness. Life, civilization, the universe. I like all of these things to be over at some point. I think that having an end is a very comforting thing." It's a quote that feels very meaningful in my opinion, because through this show I was able to experience this different point of view. This point of view of embracing an end, of having this comforting feeling of knowing that nothing is really permanent. Tsukumizu's outlook on life is deeply intertwined in the narrative, making this show a dive into the mind of the author to a level that very few works of art are able to attain. This feeling of accepting the end and being able to look back at how nice things were certainly resonated deep in me, and perhaps it will also resonate with you. Alright, now we get into the technical part of the video. Studio White Fox did an overall amazing job of this show. Everything from the very well adapted art style, beautiful immense looking backgrounds, melancholic soundtrack and great audio design contribute to make this already impressively imagined world feel even more realistic. I would draw special attention to the insert songs that I use a couple of times and that bring amazing emotional moments. Another cool thing about the production is the ending, that, as far as I know, is completely drawn by Tsukumizu, giving it a very personal and rustic feeling. I think it's a really cool thing to have the original mangaka being involved in the production, especially for a project that feels so personally connected to the author. On the voice acting side, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the two main characters. Chito is voiced by Minase Inori, one of my favorite voice actresses. She gives Chito basically the same voice as she does for Gochiusa's Chino, being almost monotone and a bit irritated at times, which isn't surprising I guess since Gochiusa was also a White Fox show. Yuri is voiced by Kubo Yurika, who makes her sound suitably loud, airheaded and at the same time very warm feeling, in a performance that reminds me of Mizuhashi Kaori as Hidamari sketches Miyako. In both cases, I think this is a rare case of absolute perfect voice casting, as I honestly cannot imagine these characters having any other voices after hearing their performances. In conclusion, Girls Last Tour is a show I'd recommend for fans of world building, introspective stories and slow-paced shows. Even if you're not a big slice of life fan, I'd urge you to give this show a try. The first episode is very strong and works as a nice sample of how the show feels overall. If you do pick the show up, I would also strongly recommend that after you finish watching, you look for the manga online and finish the story. This isn't a complete adaptation of the manga, but it gets close, with only a few chapters left for the story to end after the final episode, so you should probably go read those if you like the show. This is one of my favorite shows to have come out in the past years, and one that made me feel genuinely emotional, think about the different perspective, and most importantly to see the world to different points of view. And that's why I think Girls Last Tour is really cool. As always, if you liked this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.